Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of X's and O's. We're switching up the format, and we're also back after a little bit of a hiatus. I'm Isaac and alongside Joe Thompson. We're going to be talking about a few things today in the world of sports that we haven't had an opportunity to touch on recently because we've been on hiatus. So with the Summit League men's and women's basketball seasons now concluded, that means it's tournament time, and those will be taking place this coming weekend in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And we're going to first just jump into a little bit of discussion about the Summit League women's tournament. We have gotten an opportunity to see the NDSU women's team this season go against the best the Summit League has to offer. NDSU is the 7th seed going into this tournament, and the favorites to win the tournament currently are South Dakota State. They took home the number 1 spot. South Dakota, the Coyotes, are the number 2 seed. What do you expect from this women's tournament as we head into Sioux Falls this weekend?
I'm not expecting too much. When you really think about it when it comes to the women's side of the tournament, there's only really 2 major contenders, the top 2 seeds, South Dakota State and South Dakota. South Dakota was ranked at one point in this season. They're a very talented team. South Dakota State blew out the Bison at home by 40 points. It was insane. So really, when it comes down to it, I don't think you really see too many surprises in this tournament. It's going to be between South Dakota State and South Dakota.
One of those wins that South Dakota State's had of late, they've won their last 13 games in the Summit League, which is just an insane run, and their last loss was at the start of January to the South Dakota Coyotes. That was their one Summit League loss, and it was to South Dakota. So moving over then to the men's side of the field of the weekend here in Sioux Falls, what do you expect from that tournament? It's kind of more, in my opinion, probably a little bit more wide open in terms of the teams that can compete over the course of the weekend.
I totally agree with you there. I think there's the top 4 teams, really, when you look at it, are really the true contenders for they can win the Summit League tournament with ease. You got South Dakota State. They got the top 2 scorers in the Summit League with Mike Dahm and David Jenkins, and then at the 4th seed you got North Dakota State. They've really been sort of the surprise of the season.
I'd say
struggled the last couple seasons since they last made the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. Vinny Shahid has emerged as sort of the standout on the team alongside Tyson Ward, and they got in their starting lineup, they've had Sam Griesel, true freshman. It's really remarkable. So in between them, South Dakota State, I believe it is also
the 2 seed. The top seed is South Dakota State, as you mentioned. The 3 seed is Purdue Fort Wayne, whom the Bison just beat on a buzzer beater on Sunday. And the 2 seed's the Omaha Mavericks, and they have a bevy of scoring options. I believe they have about 8 players that are scoring above 6 points a game, which is a lot, and that's going to be very important, I think, for them, because you want to have a good amount of scoring depth during this tournament time. Not just one star player. Sometimes having depth that can multiple people that can score can really take you far.
When you look at this top 4, you see these NDSU has competed fairly well with all these teams. Mm-hmm. The last time NDSU played South Dakota State at home at the Shields Arena,
Center. The arena is the concert venue.
Yeah. But anyway,
they're both the same by the same company. But anyway.
They had a huge lead before they ultimately lost on a bank shot buzzer beater by David Jenkins. But that shows that South Dakota State can be beaten. It's not just South Dakota State guaranteed to go to the NCAA tournament every year now. NDSU played well with Omaha in their home game before ultimately fading. And then, as you said, Purdue Fort Wayne, they beat them they played well against them as well. So really, when it comes to the top 4 teams, either one of them can win that Summit League title and make a run at the NCAA tournament.
You make a good point. Their performance against the top 3 teams, the Bison's performance against the top 3 teams in the conference, the win-loss record may not tell the whole story. They really only won 1 game against the top 3 in the league, and that was against PFW on Sunday because they got swept by South Dakota State. They ultimately couldn't win at home, and it was the same deal against Omaha. They lost earlier in the season, and they lost to Purdue Fort Wayne in overtime at home earlier this season. Mm-hmm. So how they perform, because if they're going to win the tournament, they're going to have to play those teams. And if the Bison, especially if they win in their 4-5 matchup on Sunday against Oral Roberts, they'll be taking on South Dakota State in a neutral site environment. It'll be interesting to see how that takes place, and we'll be previewing that as we'll be both in Sioux Falls for the Summit League tournament, attending that weekend. It'll be an interesting weekend of basketball. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to go. It should be a fun time.
So and also just before we wrap up this segment on the Summit League, just I wanted to also touch on a little bit more, see if you could possibly quantify, like, how important was it for NDSU to finish the season the way they did in the second half of the year before moving on into this tournament?
I think it was extremely, extremely important to finish the way they did. That 5-game winning streak really boosted their confidence, and that's what led them to play well against the top teams like South Dakota State and Omaha and Purdue Fort Wayne. If that 5-game winning streak didn't happen and Vinny Shahid didn't step up and become the point guard that he has become, he's the leading scorer on the Bison right now. I don't think you see them potentially winning their first game in the tournament. When you look at them now, I think they have a really good shot at beating Oral Roberts in the tournament and to win at least one game.
I think so, yeah. I think the expectation got to be at least win one game and see how well you do against South Dakota State.
Yeah.
Oral Roberts is an 11-20 basketball team. They have 20 losses on their season. It's going to be an interesting battle, though, with the way that they played against them at home earlier this season and during that run when they won their 5th straight game. It wasn't a cakewalk, so it'll be an interesting sight to see how they do at the Denny Sanford Premier Center in Sioux Falls. So we're going to move on then to more of a professional basketball setting. The NBA continues to have some impressive it continues to have some insightful storylines to go along with. The Milwaukee Bucks still the best team in the NBA, as our old friend Eric Bonnell might be celebrating that right now. So with the Bucks being where they are and the Golden State Warriors being where they are, do you see those two teams continuing to hold their top spots in their respective conferences as the season progresses?
I mean, when you look at the Bucks, the Eastern Conference is still pretty much a top-heavy league, and as long they have obviously they have Giannis, they have Eric Bledsoe, they have loads and loads and loads of talent. The thing is, it's always, can they stay healthy? They've never really had any injury history, but that's always a red flag, because if Giannis goes down for an extended period of time, he's the Bucks leader, and they could just tumble.
It's definitely something to consider with any playoff team, really, with a leader like that of their caliber, absolutely.
And when you're looking at the Warriors, they have 5 All-Stars in their starting 5. It's no matter, and they have depth in their rotation. It's not just Curry, Clay, Draymond.
It's also Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala, and all those other guys they have off their bench.
Everybody they have so much depth. It's really, unless they are forced to miss several games because everybody gets sick, you really can't see them relinquishing the top spot. They're just way too good right now.
Fair enough, fair enough. So now the other more enticing storylines, I got to say, is we're at this point, middle of March almost. The playoffs are about a month away now. The Los Angeles Lakers are not a playoff team right now, even after all the veteran signings they made, acquiring LeBron James and all those other veteran players they added to the Lakers. They're currently 5.5 games behind the San Antonio Spurs for 8th place in the West. Do you see them climbing out of this hole?
Not really. LeBron, he's been slacking. It's not just a team effort, it's been LeBron. Granted, he was injured for an extended period of time, and that certainly did not help the Lakers. But from what I've seen on social media and in small portions of games that I've been watching, his defense has been terrible.
Oh, man.
He's been lazy. I think he's been more focused on getting the filming going for Space Jam 2 when you think about it, and drinking vino on the sidelines. But when it's just people, the rookies, the young players are shoving him to go guard his defender.
If you ever saw that Kyle Kuzma viral clip of him pushing LeBron out to the three-point line to guard a three-point shot against Memphis, that's been the Lakers since LeBron came back into the lineup.
And then another clip of LeBron just rolling the ball down the court, picking up and firing it a 3, and then clanking it off the backboard.
Now, some will say that was a good 2-for-1 shot.
True.
But, however, it's just a little disheartening when you have all that buildup, you roll the ball all the way across half court, you finally pick it up, think you're going to knock down a 3 right in the defense's eyes, but you just miss, and that's just kind of been the Lakers' second half of the season in a nutshell.
The only way LeBron has built an empire, he's got his 3 championships because he's had stars around him. When he was in Miami, he got Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. When he was in Cleveland, he had Kyrie and Kevin Love. He doesn't have that in LA. He has young up-and-comers. He's got Lonzo, he's got Kyle Kuzma, he's got Lance Stevenson, he's a good player. He's got Josh Hart, another young up-and-coming player. They have pieces. They just don't mesh well together, I don't think. Especially when LeBron is like kind of just talking about his teammates in a negative way. Like if you don't come prepared.
Well, and he threatened to almost trade the entire team for Anthony Davis.
And that never materialized. And it just doesn't boost your morale when one of the best players of all time is bashing you, and then he's not exactly showing up either.
Mm-hmm. And you can also argue with the way that this current Lakers roster is constructed. With LeBron's Miami and Cleveland, his second go-around in Cleveland's rosters, they tried to build an offense around him, centered and just him doing his work inside the three-point line and surrounding him with three-point shooters. The Lakers don't really have those options in terms of being able to build a cohesive offense around him. They're one of the worst teams in the league at three-point shooting. They're one of the worst teams in the league at free throw shooting. LeBron James has also not been a very good free throw shooter this year.
Yeah.
The pieces that they wanted to acquire to see if they could be competitive this year, they worked early on, but I think with the way that the trade deadline situation was handled, just didn't turn out to be, just might have messed with his teammates' heads a little too much. And who knows, maybe LeBron's still suffering from his injury that he suffered and missed 18 games for. But just a very unfortunate sight to see in Los Angeles, considering the expectations were very high at the start of the year.
I think another thing you have to look at is the coaching. Luke Walton was not brought in there to coach LeBron. LeBron has never really got on with his head coaches, really. It's just LeBron is the head coach.
And the general manager, and the owner, whatever.
Just whatever you want to call it. It's just LeBron James, he didn't work with David Blatt. David Blatt when he was brought into Cleveland, he was not there to coach LeBron. And he tried to make a difference, and LeBron got him canned, basically. And it just worked with Ty Lue for however long it did, and then it blew up in their faces, and they could never win another finals together. And then it's just the same thing. I see David Blatt and Luke Walton really in the same light. It's like they weren't there to coach LeBron, and now that LeBron's in there, he's trying to implement his own style of play centered around him, and that's not how they operate. So I don't think you'll expect to see Luke Walton as head coach of the Lakers after this season.
It's a very fair assumption. Real quick before we go to commercial, the Boston Celtics, they were one of the best teams in the NBA last year, and now they're currently in a situation in the Eastern Conference where they're fifth and trying to secure a first-round playoff series on their home floor where they get home court advantage. Do you see the Celtics in any way getting their chemistry issues together and making a run in the playoffs before the end of the regular season?
It's tough to say because, like you said, they have a lot of talent. They have veteran talent in Kyrie and Gordon Hayward and Al Horford, and then they got their young guys. They got Jaylen Brown, they got Terry Rozier, Jason Tatum. It's for whatever reason, it's just not meshing the same way it was last year. Granted, Gordon Hayward was injured early on in the season, so it was able to work. The problem is, I believe Jason Tatum and Gordon Hayward played the same position.
They have very similar play styles, at least.
So when you have a very quality player in Gordon Hayward riding off the bench and two-time All-Star in the last couple of seasons before he got injured, it's really just kind of tough to see him riding the bench, and he's probably not too happy with that either. So it kind of just depends on how you look at it. But I think they can eventually buckle down and maybe not grab like a top three, but maybe get into the fourth, if they're lucky, third seed. We'll see how it goes, though.
The way that everything's going in the NBA and the way the teams are, all it takes is one little streak, and then you can propel yourself into the playoffs and maybe beyond. Now that the Eastern Conference is what it is, we'll see what happens this year now that LeBron James is not a member of an Eastern Conference team. When we come back, we'll be discussing a few of the biggest contracts in sports history when we come back.
You are watching NDSU's The Bison Information Network Student Broadcasting Organization channel, BIN 484. You are watching BIN 484. Watch the weekly BIN newscast live every Thursday night at 7 p.m. right here on BIN 484. Make sure to check out Bison home softball games this season right here on Bin 484, your home for the Summit League Tournament. Also watch games on www.gobison.com, NDSU All Access. Bin 484, operated by the Bison Information Network in conjunction with the NDSU Department of Communication Broadcast Program.
I'll never forget that moment.
That changed my life.
At that moment, it hit me. This is why I joined the Guard. We're soldiers, always ready to protect our country. But we've also got communities. Family, friends, neighbors who count on us. I couldn't believe it. I just saved a life. Somebody from my hometown.
See what it means to be a citizen soldier at NationalGuard.com.
Welcome back to X's and O's, and we're going to be talking about some big happenings in the world of Major League Baseball that happened right after the last taping of our last show. It was we were in that last show. We were talking about how guys like Bryce Harper and Manny Machado were still unsigned by major league teams, and lo and behold, the next day after we released that episode, Manny Machado gets signed to a 10-year, $300 million contract by the San Diego Padres.
My goodness!
And then just last Thursday, the Philadelphia Phillies just gave Bryce Harper a 13-year, $330 million contract. Bryce Harper becoming signing the richest contract in American pro sports history with that signing. So with those happening, while we were away from doing this show, I just want to know, what was your reaction to each of those individual signings, starting with Manny Machado?
When it comes to Machado, I was really kind of expecting he would get that kind of a contract. It's just the team that gave him the contract that's really shocked me. The Padres?
Sure.
I mean,
why not?
You would expect. I was fully expecting like the Yankees or the Dodgers or one of the big market teams to give him that big of a contract, and then lo and behold, in comes the Padres, and just with one of the lowest payrolls in the major leagues to give him that big of a contract. I was really blown away, but I really just don't see any surprise that with the contract that Machado got. He's been a pretty consistent player ever since he fully developed and became a multi-time All-Star. And it's just really nice to see like a player of that caliber get paid what he may or may not deserve.
Putting obviously any personal vendettas aside, obviously, yeah. So now, can he take the Padres? Can he be that franchise cornerstone to take the Padres to the playoffs for the first time in over a decade?
With the contract that he signed, you sure think he would? I think he's a guy that you want to build your franchise around, and then just slowly and slowly add more pieces. And they already signed Eric Hosmer last season to a pretty big contract. Mm-hmm. They just need to get some pitching, some work on their outfield and their infield, and I think maybe not this season, but in a season or two.
Their farm system, from what I've heard, is one of the best in baseball. So it'll just be also a matter of whether those young players in their system, whether they can metastasize and grow up and form their skill sets. So it'll be interesting to see how the Padres do in the coming years. Now with Harper, he got more years and more money, obviously, than Machado. So
this contract is ridiculous.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. So your reaction to Bryce Harper's signing with the Philadelphia Phillies?
I mean, Bryce Harper is one of my favorite players. When he got featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated at just 16 years old, I was instantly hooked. He just #1 overall draft pick by the Nationals in the 2010 draft, as we were looking this up earlier before.
Had to remember what year it was, yeah.
Six-time All-Star, 2015 NL MVP, won the Home Run Derby in front of his home crowd last year.
Which was that was must-see TV last year.
When it comes down to it, the way he's been performing in recent seasons is not worth the biggest contract in American sports. You don't pay someone who's been consistently hitting $250, $330 million over 13 years. And not just the $330 million, he doesn't have the option to opt out of his contract. Right. There's a no-trade clause.
Those are very risky.
There's a no-trade clause. So unless he forces his way out of Philadelphia, there's no way that he is going to leave. There's no avenue for him to just walk out.
He cannot leave unless he breaks it.
He breaks it. And then just a little bit of stats here. For this upcoming season, he's going to get paid $10 million with his annual salary.
Which is nothing. Which is nothing compared to the rest of the deal. Yeah.
And then $20 million signing bonuses paid within 2 separate occasions. Pay him. I'm going to just assume half of it on June 1st and the other half on November 1st. And then from the year 2020 season to the season of 2028, he's going to get paid $26 million annually, which is just ridiculous. And then by the time he's in his late 30s, in his last 3 years of those contracts, he'll still be getting paid $22 million. And on top of that, there are multiple bonuses that are within this contract. For example, if he becomes an all-star, if he gets named to the all-star team again, he'll get an extra $50,000. If he wins the Gold Glove, another $50,000. Silver Slugger, another $50,000. If he gets league MVP, $500,000 bonus. Mm-hmm. NLCS MVP, if another $50K, and then if he wins the World Series and gets World Series MVP, that's an extra $100,000. So not only is he getting millions and millions and millions of dollars a year.
You better hope he and his team performs.
Yeah.
So you can get even more incentives.
I think he's guaranteed at least one of these bonuses every year because he's such a big name that
fans are going to vote him into the
All-Star game. Fans are going to vote him into the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Philly fans are just going to go nuts for this guy. It's just insane. But going back, it's just he's really got to prove that he's worth this contract.
Yes.
When he won his MVP in 2015, he hit well over 300. He led the league in home runs and RBIs.
But guess what year it is now, Joe?
2019. That's 4 years ago. If you go back to last season, he was named to the All-Star team, and he was hitting .219, I believe it was.
Oh, man.
That is garbage. That is a garbage batting average for someone who's such a big name.
It's in D.C. We got to have him here, and we got to have him in the Derby.
He was the face of that franchise. Mm-hmm. Keyword there was because he's no longer on the team anymore. But he's got to get back to at least hitting a solid 280. Obviously, we don't expect him to get back to his 330 average form.
Sure. I mean,
because to do that consistently over 13 years is just going to be ridiculous.
That's difficult.
But if he can go back to the form that he can hit, he can hit 30 bombs, sure, he does that consistently every year. It's just he's got to get that average up to be worthy of such a big contract.
So now, in terms of team success, like we discussed with Machado, Bryce Harper's now got a little bit more help surrounding him in Philadelphia. Where do you see the Philadelphia Phillies down the road in terms of playoff success at the end of this contract?
If you go back to last year, the Phillies were in shouting distance of making the postseason before they ultimately fell off in August and September.
Was wide open for much of the season, but the Braves ended up winning that division. So
they had an opportunity and they ultimately fell off. I think adding Bryce Harper and then building on the team that they already have with Rhys Hoskins, Jake Arrieta leading the starting rotation with Aaron Nola. It's just
they also signed JT Real Muto, the top catcher in free agency.
And then they also have Andrew McCutchen. He's not the same player he was, but he's still a solid contributor on offense and defensive side of baseball. I think you can see them at least making a wild card spot, maybe even win the division. Okay, you got to compete with the Braves in that category, though.
Certainly, and the Braves, they didn't really make too many adjustments in the offseason from their team that won the NL East, but ultimately bowed out to the Dodgers in 4 games. But so it'll be interesting to see how the NL East ends up shaping out now with the Nationals getting weaker, losing Bryce Harper, and the Phillies gaining Bryce Harper and all the other free agent acquisitions they made. Be interesting to see how that division shakes out. So now comparing both teams, so Machado, you think that he can be the franchise face? It's just a matter of whether the other players around in that system grow, and the Phillies, just a matter of whether they can make the playoffs consistently. Yeah. Who might have now, this might be a little unfair to say right now, but just for fun, Do you think, how many World Series do you think either of these players can win at the end of their careers? Because literally anything can happen, and anything you say right now, we can just look back on it later.
It's like you said, it's really tough to say right now because there were a few games into spring training before the Padres got Machado and the Phillies got Harper. Obviously, they signed those guys to get to and win World Series. I think if it's the right moment, it's the right teammates, right coaching staff, I think you could see the Padres and the Nationals win at least one World Series.
The Phillies?
The Phillies.
You just did what Bryce Harper did in his introductory press conference. If you didn't see
Son of a gun.
if you didn't see that, Bryce Harper said he was accidentally said he was going to try to bring a title to DC after he had already signed with the Phillies.
He's been at the Nationals so long,
it's going to take, I guess, some getting used to from everybody involved in this situation. So now, as well, we're going to just keep going with the Philadelphia Phillies here because they've also been in talks, or maybe not, I guess not specifically the team, but Bryce Harper's been trying to recruit Mike Trout, currently of the Los Angeles Angels, whose current contract with the Angels expires after 2020. He might try to get him. Harper might try to get Trout to join him in Philadelphia. Trout's from New Jersey. They have that local connection in that area, so it's just a matter of is Philadelphia going to be willing to lure a guy like Trout to play alongside Bryce Harper after they just gave Harper that contract?
Yeah, it really all depends on if the Phillies can afford to get Mike Trout. Because you think Bryce Harper was expensive? Just imagine how expensive Mike Trout's going to be.
Yep.
Mike Trout is like, Bryce Harper's here, Mike Trout's like right here. Mike Trout has won multiple MVPs, multiple-time All-Star. He's been so consistent. He's been on a torrid pace ever since he got into the league.
He's an MVP candidate literally every year.
Even when he's hurt. Even when he's hurt for multiple weeks, he's always in contention for MVP. That's how good Mike Trout is. But if Bryce Harper gets the $330 million, you could see Mike Trout getting close to like $400 million. I think he could be within shouting distance of $400 million.
It's just a matter of, again, as we've talked about as well previously, are these teams going to be willing to pay that much? Because if apparently now, we were both skeptical that Harper and Machado were going to get such long-term contracts with such high dollars.
Yeah.
Now it's just a matter of when Trout hits free agency.
What's that going to do?
Right. I almost think it would have been. I'm going to interject myself here because I kind of let you talk for a little bit. I just want to
Go for it.
Yeah. I almost thought that maybe Bryce Harper, maybe Machado, I don't know, but I think for certain Bryce Harper, maybe he could have gone for 4 years and 160 if he still wanted to be if he still wanted to be a $40 million a year player, or very high $1 million a year player. Maybe he could have gone for something less long term and less financially risky, as you touched on in your analysis of his contract. Because then if he would have been more willing to sign a shorter term, higher dollar contract, more teams would have been probably more interested in signing him because, as we discussed in our last episode, Harper and Machado wouldn't sign for anything less than 8 years.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest things. Neither of these guys wanted anything less than 8 years, as you said. But that's such a big commitment for teams. You can't it's just so hard, especially in baseball, to hold on to someone for so long. And then if it doesn't work out, it's just going to be viewed as one of the biggest failures.
And not only to hold on to
sports.
them for that long, but to expect those players to keep producing every single year that they're in that contract. Harper's signed in Philadelphia until 2031, and he's going to be almost 40 years old, and they're still going to be paying him, however, $22 million, you said?
$22 million in the last 3 years of that deal.
It's just
in his late 30s.
Right. It's just so risky, but you better be in that situation if you're willing to sign those contracts or to give out those contracts. You better be willing to take whatever successes or failures come with those contracts.
Yeah, we'll all see how it pans out, but we're going to be optimistic on this.
Absolutely, and we'll get into more details concerning individual Major League teams as the regular season approaches. Expect that one at the very end of March in a all MLB X's and O's edition. We'll be talking about all 30 Major League teams and what we might expect from them this season. So that's going to do it for us, and we hope to catch you back here next week for another episode of X's and O's Reloaded. I'm Isaac Dienison.
I'm Joe Thompson.
We'll see you next time.
Sweet.